In this episode of Simply Offensive, I'm joined by Shubham Khichi. Shubham is a founder of an AI security product company and went from being an offensive security professional and security practitioner to start this startup. So we kind of discussed during the episode startup life, AI in products, and what you should do to learn AI to future-proof your job. And you'll get to hear his insights on whether he thinks AI is going to replace your job. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Hello and welcome to another episode of Simply Offensive. Today I'm joined by my good friend Shubham Khichi. We've known each other from the cybersecurity community on Twitter for several years. I was on his podcast. Originally, he had a podcast, and he was on my previous podcast, The Hacker Factory. And so we live close to each other. Periodically, we get to meet up and stuff and see each other at conferences. But he's got a pretty interesting story. He's an offensive security professional, has a lot of background in that, and actually a startup owner. So he's got a really cool product and a really cool story. So welcome,
Philip. It's a pleasure to be here. Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you. Great to have you on. So it was kind of funny going way back to the podcast you used to run. What was the name of the podcast?
I think it was Security Rabbit Hole.
Okay.
Something we came up with while we just spitballing, me and my partner over there in London. Yeah. So we just said, what should be the most funniest name we can come up with? Someone takes it seriously.
So yeah, you kind of started that during the pandemic, didn't you?
Yeah. It was hard to do any conferences at that time. You're just like, okay, if we talk to people and be close to the community, what would that be? And we can be on podcasts, but that's just doing a one-time thing. But what if we invited people, like really good people like yourself, on our podcast? We can have some really good conversation. So we just ended up doing that.
So do you miss running a podcast?
Over time, I've found that I am not a good podcaster as a podcast taker, but I like to give podcasts. It's what my strengths are in. I was like, okay, if I have to ask questions, like I take a long pause before asking questions. That's not really good for being a podcaster. Like you're taking so long to even ask a question. Because I like to be thoughtful instead of just spitballing things. So I just figured that, okay, if I give a podcast, if I attend someone's podcast, it's much more valuable.
Yeah, one of the things I have to say too, out of anyone that I've known that's been on podcast or been a podcaster, is that you're straightforward and honest in your answers. You're not answering in ways that what people want to hear. You're sharing your thoughts and insights, which I think is very valuable and missing sometimes these days. Some people are just basically saying what they need to say because what they think the audience wants to hear, what's going to make them popular, what's going to help their career. But I really like the fact that, and especially this is very relevant, or very much demonstrated on your posts on LinkedIn when you're conversing with people when they post articles up or make comments, how you engage with them and ask questions and interact and share your thoughts.
I think free speech is kind of getting extremely noisy with all these AI bots in LinkedIn and Twitter are, real humans employing AI bots to post on their behalf, some made up post. And I reply back as a human feedback. I cut straight to the point. Because if something is right in my domain of AI or cybersecurity and someone is making stuff up, I don't want misinformation to spread around. And also, I think I am one of those few people who post something or comment something so straightforward, kind of tricking the LinkedIn's, they're using our posts and comments to train their models. So hopefully, my comments go inside the model training process and kind of improve it from all the noise which is coming in. It's really important to distinguish between signal and noise. I'm trying to move up more towards signals and just dim out the noise as much as possible in my speech as well as in my work.
So before we get too far into the episode, if you wouldn't mind kind of sharing your background, kind of where you started up to what you're doing today.
Man, it feels like eternity. I started up as a security engineer in Fidelity Investments. It was not a big position. It was just like a security engineer doing work. But slowly I moved into a company named called SolarWinds, who after the attack hired me to build out their entire red team. And that was a really good experience. I love the people over there. Really good work over there to building how the team works and programs and conducting testing on all their products, right? So contributing on those factors helped me move into a bigger position at Expedia Group, which is where I used to work. They did a really good work in building out their teams and channelizing programs, which I was able to contribute as part of the red teams, as a red team lead. And then I ended up building my own startup. So I feel like I've spent enough time as a practitioner that I want to build something which people really want, and understanding those pain points of, just people like me, just like security engineers, individual contributors, because these are the people who needs to be celebrated more. And they're not, which is a problem for me. So I want to build something which brings these guys into the limelight and shows their contributions as valuable to the community, right? Everybody says cybersecurity is a cost center. And I kind of hate that, because if you're a cost center in an enterprise, you are delivering no value to the bottom line of the company, because the bottom line of the company is to deliver extreme value and generate money. Right. And software developers do that a lot because they are the one building the product. But security engineers are the reason why softwares are secure in the market, in the customer's hand, and the data is protected. And we do a great job doing that. It's just that it's underappreciated, and the tools utilized to do those things are sold to an enterprise, not to a security engineer. And that removes the whole barrier between what my role is as a security engineer inside a company, or am I just using the tools bought by an enterprise, which I don't even want to use it because they're so complicated to use. Like today's security tools are extremely complicated. So I built this company, CyberAGI, to kind of make a dent in this space. Extremely transparent, extremely honest in what we're building. We're building in public. We have CISOs tapping into our product and security engineers giving extreme feedback on how to improve it. And yeah, we turn around within a week with a feature which they want. So it's fast paced, but we're building with what people want in mind and giving them value instead of what an enterprise wants and selling it for the hype cycle.
So what exactly does your product do?
Yeah, so the flagship product is Excalibur, a funny name from a movie. But what it's designed to do is to be an all-in-one cybersecurity platform. Threat modeling of products is where we believe that security engineering should begin. Is you have an actual product of a company which is making money and generating value, and how do security engineers tap into that part of the life cycle is our goal. Right. That was my goal too. In every time I've been employed, is to tap into software development and be part of that life cycle. So before production is pushed, there is a security review which needs to happen. And even in Fortune 100 companies, that's never the case. I want to change that. So we built something which has everything in one place. You have threat modeling, you have pen testing, you have tabletop exercise, which is really good. And you also have report writing. So you don't need to fiddle around with Word or other complex platforms sold in the market. The platform for report writing is baked in. It's not an additional cost. And it's absolutely beautiful to watch because everything is visual, because that's how humans learn, through a diagram, through a tree diagram. And that's how reports have been created. The editor experience is just like Notion. So you are not missing out on anything if you've already used Notion, which the entire planet does. We employ the same technology. And everything is local. So I think I'm a big proponent of privacy, which is extremely rare in security engineering space. And I wanted to build a product which can be deployed on-prem. And all our AI models, which are proprietary, can be deployed on-prem as well. And if you don't have the GPU, we just provide it in a box, in an NVIDIA Spark, a GTX box, which you own it permanently. So everything stays with you, all the data stays with you, database stays with you. We don't get anything back as your data. So privacy is extremely important, which we are proponent of.
Yeah, that's good, because I know that's so much of the concern with any kind of AI related products these days, because people are putting, private information into these public AI instances, and then the information is getting leaked. So that's really good that you're thinking about that, because a lot of companies have made the mistake of not implementing AI securely and correctly, and then you're kind of having these nightmares because of that. So that's great that you're keeping privacy in mind and offering the private LLMs and stuff instead of people having to use the public stuff.
Yeah, I think we are one of the few companies, I can count it on my hand how many do this, but in the whole world, who offer an enterprise product for security, extremely private. Most companies are scared of giving their entire code base to a customer. That's not our actual moat. Our moats are our large language models, which are trained on specific tasks. And at any given moment, there are like probably 6 models which are running in a customer environment, and all of them are private, interacting with our product and the customer data. So it makes it extremely valuable to trust, because trust is usually not in cybersecurity. It's more like fear-based selling. That's where I want to lead with, this trust-based selling.
Yes, it's really interesting to see that you've seen a lot of these problems with the way the industry is doing business and stuff, just like you mentioned, the fear-based selling. They're trying to scare people into buying the product, and sometimes that kind of seems shady, and I'm sure that's the thoughts of a lot of people that are looking at some of these products. So that's interesting, the approach that you're taking.
Yeah, it's an uphill battle for us, because we can take that easier out of fear-based selling, and that usually sells a lot of product. Not gonna lie, that works. It has been working for many years for a lot of startups. But if you want to change the world with this new era of AI, you have to build trust first. A lot of these AI companies, you ask them, like, well, so what does your AI do? And they'll tell you all the features which the product does. But what AI do you use? You ask this question, and the bottom line comes up to be, oh, we are using ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity, or whatever they use. But these are commercial products which they use an API for. And sure, these big companies, big giants will say that, yeah, we don't train on your data if you use an API, but that policy can change with the tip of a hat, right? It's very difficult to predict at this stage what is the selling point for these large AI companies whenever they're dealing with your data. Tomorrow they say, like, oh, we are starting to train all your data, even if you use the API. Well, now your entire startup is gone. Or they increase the price of their API usage. Now you have to ask the same price from your customer. Now customer trust is gone too. So I want to get away from all that. And the hardest battle is fitting all that stuff into an on-prem deployment and not being worried that it's gonna, cause any kind of bottlenecks for the customers. Because if it is managed solution, you can find those bottlenecks easily, but we have configured some kind of telemetry inside the product itself that gives an alert to the customer itself. And the way we onboard a customer is we become part of their company. So we'll be part of Slack channel, where we are an external company, we'll be part of Slack. And if you have any problems, you can just ping someone. Like, I wish, you remember the days where you could just call someone and ask for help? Yeah. Microsoft does that, where you can get on a call with someone, but that call takes probably 3 hours to get connected. I wanted a process where you can just text someone and they're part of your company, so they'll always reply back, no matter how busy it gets. There's always going to be someone who's a human who's going to reply back to help troubleshoot the issues.
So one of the things that's interesting is you hear the products that are automating pen testing. Some of them use a little bit of AI, so they're just purely automation. But so what have you seen as far as like AI being able to scale what a pen tester can do? Because for the audience, just to reiterate, you are an offensive security you have an offensive security background. So you've done this stuff manually, pen testing and red teaming. So you'd know firsthand, because some companies start out, they build these companies, and some of them are not even in the security space. They come from IT, or they're just building a product that they're trying to solve a problem without actually having experience in that. So how do you see your experience being how AI is able to scale doing pen tests and other types of security assessments?
Look, there's no way to sugarcoat this. At the end of the day, pen testing is a computer-to-computer interaction. The only part human plays is interpreting what the output is. If you look at first principles, if you break this down through first principles, that's what's basically happening. You're running a tool, it gives you an output on what the interaction has been happening with a machine, which is a website or a server or whatever. You interpret the output, and based on that output, you make your decisions, or you run another tool to get more information and investigate further. That's what it is, the whole game. Fortunately, in the past couple of years, it does really good coding. If it can code, it can come up with scripts to automate certain parts of this reconnaissance phase, which I would call it. But you still need that human trigger to pull to ensure that what it's doing is not destructive, right? Because you don't want anything which can disrupt an enterprise's process, which is delicate as it is, or their servers, which are running on Windows, 98 or whatever, 95 servers, because it's behind firewall and all that stuff and nobody's touching it. But they're still very, very delicate and ephemeral. Disrupt any of those processes, you might bring down an API of the company, which is generating revenue. You don't want that on your conscience. And even I don't want that on my conscience. And security engineers, human security engineers, are cautious of that. They're very well aware that these particular tools, which is open source tools, which we use, are destructive in some format if not used correctly. So the tools which you're using to conduct security tests, allowing a user to be fully aware of what operations are being conducted and being transparent in your operations, I think that's going to be really valuable in the long run, because you bring in trust from the user who is using your product. And most of these AI companies, they do a really fairly decent job in doing security assessment, but you got to understand that their tooling is not transparent. So if you let that run wild in your enterprise, even though they have guardrails and all that, it just takes one attempt of distrust to put a dent inside the company, and now you're no longer doing business with them. So you have to be engaging security engineers actively and make this, at least initial part of the first decade of AI revolution, you need to have humans being part of this entire operation. It needs to be a co-pilot which doesn't even show itself. It needs to work in the background. And that's how it's important to build a product where everything is working so seamlessly in the background and the humans are there to pull the trigger. And if the trigger does not have to be pulled, they know that. Right?
So one of the things I'm kind of curious about your opinion, because I know a lot of people are worried about losing jobs because AI. You see a lot of these layoffs and stuff, and a lot of folks that are working in the offensive security space. Is it possible for them to kind of future-proof their career? Are there things that they can do to make them more valuable, to kind of prevent them from losing their job to AI solutions, or at least prolong their careers? Is there any advice you've got?
That's a very difficult question, because if you look at how the landscape is, right, a lot of these startups they're poaching into a space where job replacement hasn't happened since the Industrial Revolution, because we never had job replaced in such a long time that there's an entire generation, like my millennial generation and the Gen Zs, have to worry about this kind of revolution usually take away the jobs. Sure, in certain aspects of an enterprise like marketing, sales, and all this other stuff, there is some traction in replacement. But security, because it is such a niche, and you look at security teams, even in Fortune 100 companies, they're extremely lean. They're only like 4 people securing a 40,000 employee company enterprise, right? That's how the strength of an offensive security team is, 4 to 6 people. And even in that, if you're replacing jobs, replacing a job which is a cost center, it's really cutting close to the comfort zone of what people really want, right? It's very difficult to, it's going to be easy for enterprises to replace job with AI than AI to replace a human job. Right? Enterprise will replace a human first. And they have been doing that since a long time with offshoring. So a lot of jobs are being offshored to other countries, and that's great for talent, but at the same time, you're basically replacing a job with another person, right? One person with another person. So when an AI does that, it's now replacing an offshore job with an AI. That's inevitable, but it doesn't have to affect every single department of an enterprise, because then you're not running a people company, you're running an AI company, right? And that's not how it should be. It should be people interacting with people. And these tools, these specialized tools, are just making their lives easier. Just because a life gets easy doesn't mean that it needs to be replaced with, right? I don't think so. I have made sure that our startup doesn't follow that philosophy too. We want to make people's lives so much easier that they feel their work has more value to be added in other spaces. And if you ask any security engineer, which we did ask a lot, at the end of the day, they just want to look really good. They don't want to do the nitty-gritty work of doing individual IP pen tests, or they don't want to, work with people who just becoming very difficult. They just want to really look really good, look like rock stars. And that's what we want to do, is just make them look like rock stars.
That's good. One of the things too, I think people don't take in consideration too, is what happens when this particular technology that you're relying on for automation, if it breaks.
Yeah.
Maybe if your company's breached and some of these things are taken down, you've got to have people that can go in and do manually, test things, or even manual from the blue team side to be able to go in and try to maintain these threats, because some cases if something fails, just like going back to the CrowdStrike thing years ago, not too long ago, we're talking about B-Sides Albuquerque before he started, because I remember it happened while I was there. Fortunately, I was lucky. I flew Southwest Airlines, so it wasn't affected. I didn't even see any kind of issues until I tried to buy a bottle of water at the hotel where I was staying, and they said, our computer systems are down. We can't take credit cards at this time.
Wow.
So it's kind of interesting to see how those things are affected. So being able to have people to react, I think people forget. The thing that's kind of scary about me when it comes to all this automation is sometimes management in the business overlooks things.
Yeah.
Because when I used to work for a mortgage company, we brought in this efficiency expert evaluation team. They looked at every process in the company, trying to find ways to run leaner, trying to find places to cut corners. And they laid off a bunch of mortgage processors because they were with them for, I don't know, maybe 8 weeks, 12 weeks, looking at their jobs, thought they had it figured out. They laid all these people off, and then had to hire them back because, it didn't work out. And so I think that's one of the things that kind of scares me sometimes about AI, when people are trying to use it as a complete replacement for their people and all their processes, is what happens if you don't do a correct evaluation, or whoever you got coming in doing the evaluation is trying to sell a product and they're not really too worried about, what happens down the line. So those are the types of things that kind of scares me with it, is just sometimes people that understand the technology well, they're too busy trying to cut costs that they're, not worried about.
Yeah.
The human part.
Even right now, like even you look at the AI age, right? A lot of these people, so-called people who just wake up one day and just wipe code an entire product and they start selling, because everything wipe coded looks the same. You can figure it out. This has been wipe coded, but to a customer, it doesn't know the difference unless you are the one building it, or you have built it in the past, that you know what a wipe coded product looks like. And these wipe coded products, they come up with, they're basically removing an entire software engineer from the equation. Because now Claude can, for $100 a month, you can just build your own application. But once you start scaling it, that's when the product starts becoming it's extremely brittle. It'll break any minute. And if you load test it, that's where it starts breaking, right? So they started doing this with software developers, where they wipe coded products and they started breaking in production. And there was no proper way of fixing it. And they started hiring these security engineers again, software developers to fix their products. Like, okay, well, we coded this up. Now it's breaking. Now you come and fix it and see where the problem is. Now that took double the time to build the product itself. So there are certain spaces where you can automate and replace people. Software development, to an extent of expanding as an enterprise-grade product, as well as security engineering, is not the place where you want to cut corners, because that's where the money is made. That's where the trust is built. Those are the places where you should not automate people away and then end up regretting that fact. Just keep them the way they are. They do a good job.
That's kind of the tough things about when people try to totally do away with development, or people are building companies that don't have someone that understands software development, because while some people that do software development may not understand the security piece of things, the stuff they're producing is probably better quality security than someone that's just vibe coding that doesn't understand software development and security.
We have a great team here working at CyberAGI, and we have software developers as well as AI engineers. And initially, I talked to a couple of my founder friends, and all they have done for AI engineers is just ask Claude to help them build a model out, or fine tune a model, or just use an API from existing services. It really gives value when you have a true engineer working on the product, because you can see the product and say, okay, an engineer built this. If I go ask for a feature tomorrow, they're going to build it in a week or so. And the turnaround times are faster. When you ask a Claude to do that at such a huge product, like we have, even Claude fails because we have probably like 70,000 lines per feature. And it just adds up a lot of code overhead and tech debt for AI products to work through.
So what was it like to make that transition into being a startup owner and founder? Because I know you came from a technical background.
Yeah.
What kind of things did you have to learn to kind of fill in the spaces of the things that you needed to run a startup?
Well, startup taught me a lot about myself, my capabilities, strengths and weaknesses that an employment will never do. I realized that leaning on people has more value. And if you tell people, like if you explain your vision in such a way that your team understands that, and then you just let them free to build something, you'll be surprised on what they can come back with. It's really good when you just translate that vision and these people, the team actually build something back, which is very, very close and equal to what your vision is. It's really surprising what people can do. And it's really humbling experience to build a startup, because when I was employed, I didn't understand the problems at such a high level, because you're pigeonholed into doing what you're supposed to do. But when you're an entrepreneur, especially building in the cybersecurity space, you get to see the problem from all angles, and you're kind of forced to see the problem from all angles and evaluate how the solution can be. Sometimes even in our company, we build out solutions which were not yet created in the world. And that was a revelation for us too, that we didn't even know such things could be possible. But we have eventually decided, okay, this is an idea. Let's go ahead and build something which is an all-in-one platform. It's to combine like 12 different products. And how can we build everything in one? That is a very, very difficult problem to solve, because now everything needs to talk to each other and all the things need to work together. The alternative is that you find these 12 different products and 12 different companies, 12 different sales teams, and you start negotiating and procurement with all these companies, and it becomes like a year-long problem which you're solving, and you're always in the procurement lifecycle. And these kind of problems is what I thought as an employee, that if I had a company which I could build, what would be the pain points which I would solve for security engineers? What are those high friction points? If I solve those points, makes their life so much easier and makes them look really good. And I had tremendous amount of support, which I didn't know I had, from the community of security engineers. When I explained this idea at B-Sides Albuquerque, a lot of people reached out and they started giving feedback on what they want to see in a product like this. And that kind of shaped the initial part of this endeavor, because we wanted to build something which people would want to love, and not something which is just moves a buck from one place to another, which everybody else is doing, and it just becomes tiring to watch.
So as far as security professionals that want to learn AI, what would you recommend? Where to start?
Well, first of all, don't be scared of it. I think security engineers have an adversarial relationship with AI, all because of the market and how they have manipulated the narrative that AI is replacing jobs. So just because of that narrative, security engineers and even software developers too, they don't interact with it at an extent it's capable of interacting. They just ask it simple questions, generic questions, which is not what it's designed to do. Um, I think if you augment your work with an AI system, you get way further in your career as a security engineer, because think of it as like your own co-pilot, and you have built processes and systems together to make your work easier. So you can be free to do better work, and larger amount of impact can be driven from your effort. Right? Everybody who is a security engineer wants to be part of the software development team, so that before the push to prod happens, they get their green light. That's like the OG dream of a security engineer, is one day I'll be part of a SDLC and make sure that my word has more weight inside pushing things to production than after the production has been made. Some bounty hunter from HackerOne tells you that, hey, there's a bug, and now you're just triaging that bug. That's after the fact. And if you want to be conditioned to fix issues before they happen, you have to be injected during that pipeline. But you can't do that when you're just pen testing Active Directory, right? When you're pen testing websites, right? It's not how that works. You need to be freed from this kind of ecosystem. The only way to do that is to be partnering up with these large language models, sometimes fine-tuning your own model and utilizing them to your advantage. I think that adds a lot more value.
Very cool. So we're getting down towards the end of the episode. Is there anything you'd like to share before we end the episode?
Well, I'm super excited to be here. First of all, I think you add so much value to the community, Philip, that every time I talk to you, it's extremely great insight which can be gained. And I hope all your listeners are enjoying too. As from our side, our product Excalibur is live. You can go to our website, cyberagi.ai, and just do a free trial and test it out. No sales gimmick. Nobody's going to call you in the middle of the day to sell you anything. Just try it for yourself. And if you like it, Great. Let us know something.
Very cool. So thanks for joining today. I know life of a startup founder is pretty busy, so I appreciate you taking time for the episode.
Anything for you, Matt.
Thanks everyone for joining. Make sure to like and share with your friends. One of the best ways you can do to pay it forward and help others is share content that you find valuable and educational. So until next time, take care.